Hello, Cleveland. This is WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, and you are listening to the Sports Fix. Yeah.
You love sports, and you know a lot. Your friends keep telling you, you should totally start a podcast. Well, it's time you listened and checked out Spreaker.com. People just like you have made their dreams a reality at Spreaker.com. For example, Jerry J-Rocc Myers started a Cleveland sports show called The Sports Fix, and now he has thousands of listeners. J-Rocc rocks, and so do you. Start your own podcast today at Spreaker.com. It's easy and free. That's SPREAKER.com.
Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from The Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at NoSuchThingAsABully.com.
Open Gangnam Style.
Welcome back to the Sports Mix Live. Yeah, we do it Gangnam style. We do it all kinds of style, baby. On the line, our special guest, Brown's Great. Without this man, there is no Dog Pound. Hanford Dixon.
Hey, big dog, you know, y'all got it going on over there. I was sitting there watching y'all. Y'all got a good show, man. I've listened to your show a lot, man. I got to compliment you guys. You got a really good show going there.
It's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Open Gangnam Style.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Welcome in, everybody. Launching a new month, another week here on the Sports Fix. J-Rocc with you here, boy. You know, talk about it being, I don't know where you're at. You could be literally halfway across the world in Timbuktu. Hopefully it is as beautiful where you are as it is right here in Cleveland. I don't just say that because we emanate from Cleveland. It is the most doggone beautiful day there could be. Just an absolutely perfect temperature outside. It's just perfect. What a way to go. And I'll tell you, speaking of spring, spent all day yesterday, 12-hour day yesterday. It was a heck of a weekend. Got a lot done, but spent about 12 hours yesterday doing the old spring cleanup. Drove my sons crazy. It was funny. I was having flashbacks of when I was a kid. And, you know, my dad would get a bug up his butt that it was time to clean the garage. Son, cancel your weekend. Tomorrow we're tearing apart the garage, and you'd sit there for 2 days and you'd have to clean the garage and anyways, you knew those weekends. Anyways, that's how my oldest felt yesterday. He wanted to get out and see his woman and all that stuff, and 12-hour day later we ended up tearing this place apart from one end to the other. But you know, I looked at him, I said, hey, aren't you glad they call it spring cleaning and not weekly cleaning, because otherwise it could be a long one. But anyways, we knew this was coming. I wanted to get ahead of this because today, hey, what do you know, it was snowing 2 days ago. This is Cleveland, baby. And now it's absolutely beautiful outside as we hit our first episode of March. We get rolling here. A whole lot to get into today. And you know what? If those of you that have been with us for a few years know that we kind of go in a couple of cycles. Obviously, you get the really heavy news cycle times, football season, basketball season, when things are really kicking up and all of the sports are overlapping. It's really day-to-day intensive. I kind of like the slower months, like where we're at now, because it allows, such as here, especially when we're only able to get on once or twice a week, it allows guys like Dan and myself to come on here and have some more evergreen type shows. Talk about some wider-ranging stuff. Today will be, a good day to get into some of that, especially with Peyton Manning, his retirement pending here just moments from now live. We're going to get into some of that here with Dan, but I like that because I like when it's not so time intensive. We got to talk about something that's happening specifically right this second. The world's going to come to an end today. One of those episodes, we've got a lot to get into. Dan Wismar will be here with us. We'll crack open the phones with you guys and get into all kinds of stuff on this absolutely gorgeous Monday. Way to kick off the week and get rocking and rolling with us here on the Sports Fix. Speaking of rocking and rolling, why don't we do the same thing? I am your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers, and this, my friends, if you're new, is the Sports Fix. Live on your radio dial across the Sports Fix radio. You can tell I'm feeling good today. Across the Sports Fix radio network, which, by the way, may be expanding soon. I've got a couple of meetings this week, and I'm looking forward to hopefully some good things to let you guys know soon about some different places you may be able to hear us soon on your radio dial. The radio network, TuneIn.com, the place that most of you listen live. It's such a great place to listen to the show. Real time, anywhere, HD audio, tune in. Perhaps you're listening live. Welcome in on Spreaker and Mixler and their respective, digital and mobile apps. Third pot of coffee will do that to you here at noon. I'm fired up, rolling this morning. I bought some coffee this weekend that had an extra kick of caffeine, and that was what I was looking for because I've just about maxed out the value of basic coffee. I'm telling you, man, I'm like a drug addict, man. I'm digging through the aisles at the store going, man, it's regular coffee, man. Get out. Dark doesn't have anything to do with the caffeine. Where's the boosted stuff, man? I'm going up to people in the store, apes. What's that coffee you got out the back, man? I know you got some of that stuff you slip out the back door. Some of that real coffee back there. So I'm fired up here this morning, and it's good. That's your benefit, baby, because we just get rocking and rolling. But tons of things to do. Like I said, across the network. TuneIn, Spreaker, Mixler. Maybe you're listening live on the sportsfix.net, our home base, your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports, Sports Fix. It's got the social media widgets. It's got the live broadcast, the replays, all of that little bio with my handsome little picture and so much more right there. Bookmark it if you haven't, thesportsfix.net as well. Shout out to all of you guys. There are thousands of you that listen around the world on digital delay 24 hours a day. Time zones, zip codes, area codes, everywhere, baby, on sites like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all the different places that you guys, CarPlay, all the different places that you guys are listening to us, streaming, subscribing, podcasting, download, feeding, whatever you're doing. Thank you so much for doing it with us, joining us, and getting your fix. Be a part of the show. I say it every day. This is ours. This is yours, baby. 216-539-7535. Day or night, give me a call. 216-539-7535, the 24-hour hotline. You can hit us up. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, email, all the time. Instagram, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Twitter, @thesportsfixcle. You can tweet me directly @JRockDaddy, all one word on both, @thesportsfixcle, @JRockDaddy. You can hit me up on Instagram as well, @JRockDaddy. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Again, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Twitter, @thesportsfixcle, @JRockDaddy. Instagram, @JRockDaddy. All one word across the board. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. And as we get rocking and rolling here into the show, a couple of things a lot of things I wanted to get into. I mentioned Peyton Manning, obviously. That's coming here in just a few moments. Bruce in the chat room. Shout out to Bruce, back from spring training, by the way, talking about RG3. We're going to get into that here in a little bit. We'll talk some Browns free agency. I kind of wanted to hold off until Dan gets in on this conversation to talk about the Browns, talk about any of that pending stuff, talk about the Cavs as well, because a lot of you say, hey man, the Cavs are getting better. I say the Cavs are getting better, remembering to play defense again. You notice the difference? These cats are on a different level when they decide to play defense, and you can hear in my voice week to week whether the Cavs are playing defense or not, man, because matter of fact, I had a stat too, and I don't know if I have it here in front of me. I had it right before the show, wasn't planning on getting into this right now, but the Cavs, when the Cavaliers hold their opponents under 96 points, which is where that was the level they were at, last season and in the first half of this year with David Blatt. 96 points or fewer to the opponent. Cavs are 21-3. Think about that. They've lost 17 games this season. They've only lost 3. Now, granted, most teams are going to have a very good record if you can hold your opponent to 96 points. But the fact that the Cavs are able to do it says something right there. And that's a big thing. Big part of that. 14 of their losses come when they get to trying to go back and forth. They get away from that defensive side of the ball. It doesn't mean that they can't score and get into that, but they get into it and they're not able to stay. They can't be consistent on both ends. I mean, you get those rare games where they do. That's what drives me nuts. And if you can't be consistently great on both ends, I'd just rather you be consistently great on defense, because that will make you consistently great overall. Defense wins championships. But anyways, Cavs 21-3 when they're holding opponents to 96 points or less. How about the other day, by the way? Not only did they come back and win that game, they were down almost 20 points early in that game the other day. And from 18 points. From that point on, they held the Celtics to like 40% shooting, held them to 60-something points the rest of the way, and pulled their way back into it. And that was one where, the opponent did get over 96, but it wasn't much. I think it was 120-103 was the score. But it was the way they came back, the way they fought back. And I know it's Boston. But anyways, 21-3 when they're holding the opponents under 96 points. 29-3, here's the other part of the game that the Cavs can be so good at when they want to. Passing the ball, assists. When they have got a large number of assists, 22 or more as a team, the Cavs are 29-3. Though, to me, that's all you need to say are those two stats right there. And if the Cavs do that, they can fulfill everything that you, me, and everybody out here wants them to do, hopes they can do, thought that they can do, so on and so forth. Defend and pass the ball. That right there, and the Cavs, they at least give themselves a shot at the Golden State Warriors or the San Antonio Spurs. And the defense lays it down more than anything else. Plain and simple. No team defensively has given the fits to the Golden State Warriors that the Cavs did in the finals last year, and that's no mystery why they were able to do that. So, and they did that last week, as you saw. Cavs had the good one with Indiana where they pulled it out late. Then they rolled the other night, just absolutely steamrolled the other night. And then that game with Boston where they fought their way back in that one. Yeah, down 18 and then come back and flip it and win it. So, I mean, it was a 25-point turnaround. They win by 17. In that game against the Celtics the other day. But it was defense was the name of the game. We're going to get into some more of that here with Dan Wismar in a little bit. We've got Peyton Manning coming up here. One thing, Dan sent me a link too, and this is why I'm putting off some of this conversation. He was like, "Hey Jerry, we're going to talk about some different things today," and he was sending me some ideas. And one of the things he wanted to talk about was LeBron, because there was a lot of talk too. I mean, things got especially you remember last week's show. Cavs were in a precarious position, lost a couple of games, and some hey, I was right there. The lack of intensity on the defense, the lack of leadership from LeBron, and of course, we haven't even brushed on the fact that the Cavs got a couple of days off and the world went crazy because LeBron James went to Miami and started playing some hoops, practicing with Dwayne Wade. I was talking to some buddies, and my one guy was playing devil's advocate. He's like, "Hey, maybe he was down there recruiting Dwayne Wade." I said, well, if so, they're both bad people because it's the middle of a season. And if I was the people in Miami, I wouldn't be too happy about that either. Don't laugh about that and say, "Oh, well, it's the middle of the season. He wasn't down there sabotaging the Miami." Well, maybe he was. But anyways, it was a bad look, even though and he don't care, by the way. LeBron could care less what anybody thinks about what he does. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, in all honesty, he looked at the media and said, "I'm going to do what I'm a grown-ass man. I'm going to do what I want to do because I want to do it." And sometimes you do have to be like that. But I get it. It's a bad look, all that stuff. I could, in all honesty, care less. I could care less what any of these guys do on their day off as long as it doesn't involve swans. No, I'm just kidding, man. As long as it doesn't involve the things you shouldn't be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, I'd rather be arguing with guys that are upset that a guy went to practice basketball somewhere else than that a guy went to spend the night in a club all night or something, because at least his priorities are in the right place, or at least you think they are. But hey, look, if LeBron, now the one place that he's wrong is getting super sensitive about it and getting snippy with the fans and the media about it. He can't do that because he's paying the price for his life. I mean, and what I mean by that is the reason that people get all up in a tizzy is because you left Cleveland for Miami. You left them in a lurch. Therefore, it's like the couple that divorces and then gets back together. Yes, everything may be great and you may love each other and you're so happy that you're back together and you realize the mistake you made, but there's always going to be those moments of doubts that pop up that make you wonder. There's always going to be that little, it can never be, you can put a lot of the trust back in the bottle, but it never fits back in exactly the same way as it poured out. Like my man Mike Pettin used to talk about drops in the bucket when it comes to trust, but it never goes back in exactly the same as it went out. So of course you're going to have that. And it would have been less if you had gone to L.A. and practiced with Kobe than it would if you went to Miami and practiced with Dwayne Wade, because the way the Cleveland fans got it figured out last time y'all conglomerated together, you left Cleveland in a lurch. So you have to understand that if you're LeBron James, and I don't know if he does or if he cares, but he should, because that's one place that to me he can't flip it around. And on top of that, I kind of love it when they get, hey, man, I'm going to do what I want to do. But hey, when you get paid that much money, when you put yourself on the throne, when you put yourself in the spotlight, then you deal with all these other things. And I don't get too much into a tizzy about that. But the world did get pretty hot that LeBron James went, no pun intended, went down into the land of the Heat and got on some practicing with Dwayne Wade. I'm curious what Dan Wismar thinks about that here. I'll tell you what, he came back and played some ball in the last two games since then. That's for sure. So Dan's going to join us. We're going to talk about. And matter of fact, where I was going with that was he wanted to talk about a couple of things here with LeBron as he continues to move up the ranks all time. By the way, he's climbing his way up. Dan's got it figured that he's about 2 playoff seasons away from perhaps overtaking the statistical top spot as far as playoff scoring. So we're going to talk a little bit about some LeBron James stuff with Dan, and it was a good setup for me. I wanted to talk, you guys, we talk about all kinds of different stuff, and one of the things I get into is how the fans of today, and not just sports fans, in the world in general, they overvalue the present and they undervalue the past. And I see it all the time. And that doesn't mean that everything was better back in the day. This isn't one of those lectures, but it always makes me interested when I look at how people put things into focus today and just act like some of the things in the past had never disappeared. I had matter of fact, a good segue into this. This past weekend, I had hit the bookstore last week, and I grabbed a bunch of new sports books to check out, things that I hadn't read. And one of the ones that I've read this book several times before, and I'm one of those guys that can reread a book 3-4 times and find things that I missed the time before. So anyways, I'll read. I've read Sundays in the Pound so much I could read that book to you without the book. But anyways, I was reading Tall Tales by Terry Pluto, which is, if you guys, and I encourage anybody, I was telling some of my younger friends this, some of the guys that want to argue with me that Bill Russell was overrated and this player and that player compared to LeBron James and that, I said, go read Tall Tales by Terry Pluto. And it's off-putting to younger people. My son gives me the same reaction because you see the dates and you're like, well, why do I want to read about basketball in the 60s? But it's basically about the glory era, the beginning, the true first glory era of the NBA game, as the Celtics were going, as the league was really getting itself into play. I think every player in the league should, when they see some of these things, where things started and how it got to the opulence that they live in now, the world of absolute luxury of being a basketball player that they live in now. But it's all kinds of cool stuff. And like I even tweeted, and I put this out on our social media, that just makes you realize how much people lose frame of reference comparing guys from the past. Guys will do something today, and like, here's the perfect example. You hear about the multi-sport athletes. I mean, I talk all the time. Bo Jackson was the man. I mean, and there's been some other guys, Brian Jordan, Deion Sanders, that have tried to play multiple sports. Man, I'll tell you what, I don't know if many of them except Bo. You got, Deion Sanders, whatever. How about Gene Conley? Forget Neon Deion. Gene Conley in the early 1960s. This guy played for the National Basketball Association and Major League Baseball at the same time. Basically, he went 13 straight consecutive seasons over a 6-year period playing for the Boston Celtics. And I think he played for another team in the NBA. He played 6 NBA seasons, averaged about 6 points a game, 7 rebounds, won a couple of championships with the Celtics. He would play basketball season into, April, May, whenever early April, I think it was back then, whenever the basketball season ended, and he was in the championship, so he'd go all the way through, and it would take him past the beginning of baseball season. So he would skip spring training and jump right into pitching. He was a pitcher in Major League Baseball, and for the life of me, I think the Red Sox may have been one of the teams he played for, but he had nearly 100 wins in his career as a Major League pitcher as well. Again, 91 wins. But this guy, for 6.5 years, Gene Conley went from Major League Baseball as a starting pitcher to the season would end, he would jump right into a pair of shorts and some tennis shoes, and he'd spend the next 3-4 months, whatever, in the National Basketball Association, and then vice versa. No training camps, no off season. That's a hell of a run. And Matt, that's a nonstop, almost 7-year run back and forth at the major league level of 2 sports. And of course, it's a very rudimentary level of the NBA at the late 50s, early 60s. But I find that funny because I'm like, man, if there was, imagine if there was a cat today, right now, doing that. You could not put a cap on the publicity, on the stories, it would be, this crazy world news cycle that we live in and how everything gets blown. And that's what got me, that's kind of to bring this whole subject full circle. The way people look at the accomplishments of the past and the present, just like my one buddy and I, we get into he's LeBron James guy and I'm a Larry Bird guy. As far as, obviously, look, man, there's time for LeBron to end up wherever. He could be the greatest of all time if he lives up to his potential. He's not there yet. But, I'll always throw out Larry Bird and silence people down. Wait, Larry Bird wasn't as good as... let me throw some stuff out here at you, But anyways, it always shows me that, and it's always going to be, people are going to always overvalue what's happening in their generation more. But imagine right now if... Just use LeBron because he's a big famous player. Imagine if LeBron James played basketball and then jumped off and went and pitched for the Indians over the summer as soon as the last basketball game was played. And then he pitched for the Indians until baseball season was over. He was a starting pitcher going out there every 4th day or whatever and pitching for the Tribe. And then every 5th day, whatever. And then as soon as baseball season's over, LeBron pops on the basketball court. 6-7 straight years of that. It would be... They'd build the statue. They definitely build the statues now. They wouldn't wait until later. What I'm saying is that would be so overhyped and overglorified. Yet I probably just told that story, and there maybe a handful of you guys out there that even know who the hell Gene Conley is. And that's not like a bad thing. I didn't know who he was before I read about him either. My point is that's it. Exactly. And so I love the way people value things in the present compared to how they were in the past. By the way, speaking of that trip to the bookstore, and this is off the topic of sports, any of you guys that may get into it's kind of a business book, but it's just more about the greedy corporate culture of this world that we live in. I had ordered a book that wasn't in, and I got it over the weekend. I actually plowed through it in about 3 hours, and it was a good 300-page hardback. It's called Fools Rush In, and basically it's about the worst corporate merger in the history of America, the America Online merger with Time Warner. And you realize, when you read this thing, it will literally make your skin crawl to know that we have so many problems. I mean, real problems. And I'm not being all fuddy-duddy. We've got homeless people. We've got so much hunger and all these things in this incredibly progressive first world country the most industrialized country in the world, this most progressive in the world that we live in. We have these problems, though, and you'll read. I mean, it will make your skin crawl to see billions and billions and billions of dollars and the shenanigans, the lies, the people that, I mean, really, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people lost their life's work, their pensions, and then fat cats at the top of this thing came out so fat. And but this kind of ties right into what I'm saying about the old versus the new. Basically, America Online, in less than 15 years of business, found a way to cook their books and make themselves look like the hottest stock in the world. And they were able to trade in their worthless stock that was months away from hitting the bubble and being discovered. And they were able to exchange it for some very, very real Time Warner stock. And they basically bought Time Warner, one of the longest running, most industrialized, one of the biggest media conglomerates ever built in this country. Took hundreds of years to put it together. Took 100+ years or whatever to put it together. And they used their fake internet money to buy this very real, very stodgy, very old world corporation and then just destroy it from the inside out. And then all the fat cats at the top, all the fat cats at the top get hundreds of millions of dollars and they get out. And they're all doing interviews in this book from their beaches. And one guy lives in a place called the Reserve. And when I Google searched it, the definition of it is the Reserve is the place for only the richest of the rich. It's a place where you have decided where you want to be the rest of your life and live in the most opulent lap of luxury. It's basically a gated community for the richest of the rich where basically everything is handed to you. Everything. It's like a fantasy world. It's like, what was that, Paradise Island? Deplane. Anyways, these cats and there's hundreds of thousands of regular ass people like us that got busted out, lost their pensions, their 401ks, everything. And these cats just went to town. But it was just awful. And the fact that it was even allowed to happen. And when you read it and you realize that billions with a B, hundreds of billions of dollars just or stolen or manipulated, and then it's a trip. Anyways, Fools Rush In. Nina Monk is the author. If you're into that kind of thing, I will tell you though, you'll get sick to your stomach reading it, going, man, this world that we live in is pretty screwed up, man. And anyway, so I had some fun there, and then I did some spring cleaning, and now here we are doing the Sports Fix as we roll on. Let's get Dan Wismar in on this. We got a lot to do. Hell, championship week's kicking off this week. Monsters. I just talked to my man Tony Brown. Lake Area Monsters having their best regular season in franchise history. They have been absolutely tearing it up. They are in the middle of a 3-game losing streak, however, just as I say that, as they dropped that one the other day, headed back out on the road to Rockford. But the Monsters, 31-19, 5-5, best start to the regular season that they've had so far, and the Monsters are continuing to plow along. I talked to Tony. We're going to try to get him in on the show. I'm going to try to get back in here this week and do a second episode, by the way. We'll see how we can get that accomplished. So we set the stage. Damn, we're 30 minutes into this thing, man. Here's all the stuff we're going to get into. Plus, hey, how about this? How about them Indians? All I'm going to say is if you're a longtime listener of the show, you may have, maybe once or twice last year, heard me throw out the crazy idea that I would try and bat Carlos Santana leadoff. Said it a dozen times at least on here. People laugh at me. Till Terry Francona said last week, boy, I'd like to think about playing Carlos Santana at leadoff. Now everybody's talking about it. I'm telling you, there's something about his skill set. If he's going to have the eagle eye and be able to deliver still, even though people, by the way, I saw a great piece the other day, and I should post it on our social media, about the 20 inaccuracies that people claim about Carlos Santana, and it basically shoots down all of the, he doesn't hit in the clutch, and it's got all of the breakdowns. But anyways, and it just busts a hole in all of them. Carlos Santana is much more effective than the anti-Carlos Santana people give him credit for. But I remember, and I'm going to get with Dan about this, I said, man, I'd like to see him try leadoff because he can draw those walks. And if you don't pitch him right, he's going to either draw a walk or he's going to be able to do some damage with the bat. And he's only going to be the first batter in the game once. Then he'll just be there at the top when you flip the lineup over. And think about the advantage you got there if the bottom of your lineup can get on base, as Carlos Santana's coming up at the top. And then you got 2, 3, 4, and 5 coming up behind him. I do believe it's worth a thought, and we're going to talk about that with Dan. We're going to talk some Indians. We're going to talk about Carlos Santana. Peyton Manning, we're going to start there. Peyton Manning retires his legacy. Where is it? All-time best. We'll talk with Dan Wismar of Everybody Hates Cleveland next. While we're talking quarterbacks, we'll segue into the Browns. NFL free agency is about to be upon us. We'll talk LeBron and the Cavs and this little winning streak they're on and more. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland joins us next. Don't go anywhere. We're like Emerald, baby. Boom! We're going to kick it up a notch next after the news here on the Sports Fix.
This is the Sports Fix.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
They call me Mr. Pig!
We'll call you whatever you like, as long as we can call you a fan of the Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
I'm Little Teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Yeah. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's fantasy sports superstore, fantasyjocks.com. No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. From their awesome Wing Mondays to every single Cavaliers and Buckeye Hoops games in full HD.
Kyrie split to D, goes inside, teardrops it home right down Euclid.
That's way up in there for two.
The excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials.
And now,
fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
Let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, eat up, y'all. You's as good church-going folk. Y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. He's the only five-time MVP in NFL history. Peyton Manning will make it official this afternoon. He will announce that he is retiring after 18 seasons. ESPN analyst Jeff Saturday spent his Sundays with Manning for 13 seasons. The six-time Pro Bowl center was Peyton's teammate with the Colts.
As a guy who got to play with them and literally watch the game change because of what he could do. Watch defensive coordinators change the way they play you. It was just an amazing thing to be a part of.
Manning will announce his retirement at a news conference at 1 p.m. Eastern Time live on ESPN TV and radio. As expected, Washington this morning released quarterback Robert Griffin III. He lost his starting quarterback job to Kirk Cousins last season. ESPN's Ed Werder is reporting the Giants have informed wide receiver Victor Cruz that he will be released unless he agrees to take a cut and pay. 3 more tickets to the NCAA tournament will be punched tonight with championship games in 3 conferences. Hofstra and UNC Wilmington in the CAA, Monmouth and Iona in the Metro Atlantic, 7 Eastern on ESPN, Chattanooga, East Tennessee in the Southern, 9 Eastern time tonight on ESPN2.
Sports Center brought to you by Wendy's. Taste the delicious difference. Fresh, never frozen, 100% North American beef, crisp toppings, and a bakery soft bun makes on a Dave's Double at Wendy's. Fresh beef available in contiguous.
Hey Cleveland, this is Tristan Thompson of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you're listening to Sports Fix.
Do we want to get rocked?
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live. J-Rocc back with you. Dan Wismar's on the hotline. Going to join me in a second. You are hot and heavy with us. Keep it rolling on the phone lines, on the social media. We'll hit you up as we can. Phones are going to Dan, but you can hit us up on the 24/7 hotline. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. Facebook, Twitter, email, instant access to the Big Daddy and Dan Wismar. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter at The Sports Fix CLE. Email The Sports Fix at AOL.com. Join the over 25,000 social media followers of The Sports Fix as we get back into the show here. Welcome back in, you guys. As I said, got Dan on the hotline, and a couple of things here as I get ready to pull him. I did not even get into it in the first segment, but I was listening actually during the break. The Harry Buffalo deal came up, and the UFC guy go, here now. And I'm like, oh, hell. We didn't even talk about the other night. I don't know how many of you guys watched it because I know it was a pay-per-view the other night. UFC 196. I watch a lot of UFC, watch a lot of mixed martial arts. I would put that up there. A lot of times you come away and you're not satisfied. Yeah, but this wasn't one of them. That pay-per-view the other night was one of the best UFC's ever put on, which is what you get when both main event, and the undercard stunk, by the way. I thought the undercard was incredibly boring. The 2 main events made up for that and then some. 2 upsets in the 2 main events. Holly Holm just knocked out Ronda Rousey in a big deal. Everybody saw it all across the news. Beat the crap out of Ronda Rousey less than 2 months ago. First title defense, took on Miesha Tate, who knocked off Jessica Ai back last year, if you guys remember, Cleveland's Jessica Ai. Anyways, Miesha Tate, and I like Miesha Tate, by the way. And she is now the face of the women's division because that was a hell of a fight. I don't know how many of you guys are with it as far as watching women fight, but those 2 bantamweights went out there, Miesha Tate and Holly Holm, and that was a fight. First off, quality-wise, it was as good as anything you'll see, and that was a battle. Miesha Tate, smaller, Holly Holm's a big knockout boxer, and Miesha Tate almost had her early, had one takedown and choked her out, and then Holly Holm was able to escape the choke. I don't know how she escaped it. She got out of it. The next couple of rounds, Holly Holm started taking control of this fight and stuffed 8 straight takedowns in a row from Miesha Tate. You figure, okay, she got her figured out. Miesha Tate got her one shot, and then that was pretty much it in the second round. Final round, there's 90 seconds left in this fight. Miesha Tate does not give up on a takedown. She gets Holly Holm down. Then she gets her back, gets Holly Holm in the same choke that she had her on earlier in the fight. Holly Holm tries a desperation, grabs her by the back of the head, tries to flip her over, almost a snapmare, flips her, she holds on, and rolls her right into the choke. Holly Holm refused to tap. She went like a dead fish. You saw one spasm. It was almost a dangerous scene for a second. They had to jump in there and wake her up real quick because she was out on the spot. Miesha Tate, new women's bantamweight champion. So now, instead of Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, the next title fight will be Ronda Rousey against Miesha Tate. So, and I don't know that I like that, to be honest with you, because Ronda Rousey's already beat Miesha Tate twice. She's kind of, I think, although, hey, you never know. Once you win a fight like this, it could turn your whole career into another direction. And Miesha Tate fought her ass off the other night. She fights like that, especially with Ronda Rousey's head being messed up from losing. Who knows? But anyways, now they're going to do that. I would have went the other way around. I would have did Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey, gave everybody the rematch that they wanted, made that the number one contender, and then thrown the winner of that against Miesha Tate. But instead, they're going to go the other way around, which to me, I don't know that I like that, because then let's just assume if Ronda Rousey regains the title from Miesha Tate, then you get Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm again with Ronda Rousey the dynamic doesn't seem right. I'd almost rather see each of those two, Rousey and Holm, lost their last fight, let them fight, and the winner gets Miesha Tate. But that's not what Dana White's doing. He's going with Rousey versus Miesha Tate, which to me kind of reeks of trying to get your golden child back on top. Right in time for her to be on the cover of the video game and stuff, you know. By the way, how's the video game look now the other night? Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor are the two covers of the brand new UFC game. That's the other upset the other night. Conor McGregor, my favorite UFC fighter of all time, the future WrestleMania main eventer. Mark my words. Eventually that man will make some big money in the professional wrestling world. But anyways, Conor McGregor, biggest UFC draw in the world. He knows how to talk people into watching his fights. Jumped up 2 weight classes. He was going to take on Dos Anjos the other day for the middleweight title. Instead, Rafael Dos Anjos had to pull out. So Nate Diaz comes in with Nick Diaz comes in with the last minute substitution. Was 11 days notice. Diaz was great after the fight. He said, hell, I didn't even have a training camp. If I'd had a training camp, he might have never touched me, along with some great expletives that he dropped after the fight. But Conor McGregor came in, and he was so over cocky on his way to the ring. I looked at the guys I was watching the fight with, and I said, son of a gun, I think he's scared. It was beyond just cocky. It was that cocky where you're trying to cover up almost. And meanwhile, Diaz looked like a guy in a prison yard. He's just looking over at McGregor like, hey, man, I've done this before, and I ain't scared of you. Your reputation, I don't care. All us Diaz's do is fight. So anyways, and that's what they did. Diaz, he had the weight advantage because McGregor went up in weight and then had to cut down, so he didn't have his natural speed and his punches. I mean, he was getting hit. When you go up 2 weight classes, when you get hit by guys, it hurts a hell of a lot more than it used to, because you're going up 20, 30 pounds of actual natural weight. Guys are going to be a hell of a lot stronger, and Diaz just beat the hell out of McGregor in the late stages of that fight. Really, it was a great fight. And then in the middle of the round where it went down, he hit McGregor with a shot on the jaw, and McGregor was done. I looked around the room and said, he's going down. And give him credit. McGregor lasted about another 90 seconds, but he was going down, and he was done. And Diaz could feel it. He looked at him and shrugged his shoulders and said, wait a minute, I'm about to knock you out. And then he put him down, choked him out. McGregor had no choice but to tap. 2 huge upsets, and definitely one of the more enjoyable nights of UFC fighting the other night. Meanwhile, I didn't even mean to leave my man Dan Wismar on the line that long. Let's get him up, see if maybe he watched it. I don't know if Dan's a UFC guy or not. Anyways, welcome into the show. Welcome into the Sports Fix. If you're joining us, Dan Wismar, my man from Everybody Hates Cleveland. Dan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, J-Rocc. Good to be with you. Spring has sprung. I'm jealous of Bruce for being out in Arizona, and I'm calling around today to see if anybody wants to go play golf with me this week. So it's all good, man. It's all good.
That's what I'm saying. I heard, the nice weather was coming in on Tuesday. I went out to go check the mailbox this morning. I said, it came early, man. This is the day right here. It is a beautiful one on the outside for sure, man.
Absolutely, yeah. We're starting with Peyton. Am I right?
Yeah. Hey, you don't do the UFC thing, do you?
I'm not a big UFC guy. No, I was a collegiate wrestler and a high school wrestler, and sort of a snob when it comes to that sort of thing. Pure wrestling is great. Beyond that, just not that big of a fan. No, nothing personal, buddy.
Oh God, no, absolutely not. No, I just because and that's funny because you're a wrestler. A lot of the wrestling guys, the amateur guys that I know, actually are the ones that prefer MMA. It's a lot of the boxers that I know that are not big fans of the MMA.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of people that came up through collegiate wrestling and high school wrestling are people that gravitated to UFC and that sport. And then there's some of the better ones actually.
And I've often said,
it's just never grabbed me. Just like I used to be into boxing, but lately it's just I just lost my taste for it because it's obviously a sport where the intention is to inflict brain damage on the opponent. I just think we got to go a different direction.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. I mean, just 12 rounds of repeatedly, bouncing the glove off somebody's head. I think if we're that, I've often had that conversation with people, and I love. By the way, I'm an old school sweet science guy. Love boxing, but if we're legislating how fast guys can run down the field and tackle guys in a football game, then how can we have guys stand off in the middle of the ring with gloves on and intentionally give each other brain damage? I'm saying we can't open one door and not the other. So I'm with you, and I've often wondered. That's one thing that you hear about football and these other sports. At some point, that's got to come. Say what you will. At least in MMA, that's really not a possibility. The minute a fighter is in any position of vulnerability, fights are stopped. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true, and they do handle that really well. It's just one of those things. Every time I see a picture of Muhammad Ali, I think, wow, that and the fact that boxing came to be recognized as such a utterly corrupt sport from a standpoint of gambling and organized crime interests and things like that it just became distasteful.
You know what's messed up too is they used to have boxing at every high school. That was like a thing. Like think about that now. We're wondering if they're going to let our kids play football 10 years from now in high school. They used to let them box.
Yeah, wild.
Because it was, America's changed, but anyways, I was just curious about that. Let's talk a little Peyton Manning. I mean, obviously, for most people, if you're listening live, it's about to happen. If you're listening throughout the week, it's already happened. But Peyton Manning, as many people speculated, putting an end to his on-field career. And, I mean, you and I have talked about him a lot. Let's just start with the question. Where do you put Peyton Manning on your big list? Is he at the top or no?
Well, sure. If he's not at the top, he's it's like what who was it that Bum Phillips used to say about Earl Campbell? That he may not be in a class by himself, but it sure doesn't take long to call the roll.
Right.
Top 1, 2, or 3 certainly ever, and what he leads in career touchdowns and career yardage. I mean, those are the 2 big numbers. So yeah, certainly a case can be made that he's the greatest ever. Well, one other thing, my reaction to it, Jerry, is first of all, we talked before about what a classy guy he is, and where we're talking about a world where class is, we're going to be talking about people with class in the past tense pretty soon.
Yes.
Peyton certainly exemplifies that. He did it again yesterday when, as I understand it, he personally, individually texted all of his teammates to give them the news before they heard it in the media. I just thought that was a very cool thing to do, and it's sort of characteristic of him, the way he's handled this, how he didn't do it immediately, as we talked about after the Super Bowl, on site, to keep the focus on the team. Don't make it be all about him. Obviously gave some time, and I don't know how seriously he considered coming back or whether this was just what he felt was an appropriate time frame. But, the guy just has all kinds of class and something that's increasingly rare, and I just admire him for that, if nothing else.
Now, as far as considering coming back, I did hear some stuff about a week ago out of Denver that said and maybe this was part of it. Maybe he was already sure anyways that was going to... I can't think of a reason to come back, but he wasn't coming back to Denver. From what I had heard out of Denver is if Peyton Manning decided that he wanted to play another season, it was going to be in a different uniform because Denver had already made their decisions that they were planning on moving forward, and they assumed that he was as well. They weren't just kicking him to the curb. They assumed he was done, but they also weren't interested in revisiting the conversation. So I think that may have been part of it too, is had he wanted to play some more, he would have been deciding to go to another team and roll his dice starting again. And as he just saw, it took him 2 years in Denver to get it done. You know what I mean? So
Sure, yeah. And the other thing, too, Denver, they've got to attend to business. And a part of attending to business was making a decision on Brock Osweiler. And it came out,
he's free agent.
2 or 3 days ago that they making him an offer and want to tie him up to a long-term deal and pay him starting NFL quarterback money. And you're right, that may have had something to do, or frankly, it may have, you don't know if it was the cause or the effect of Peyton Manning's ultimate decision. But I think you're probably right that, hey, no matter what you do, Peyton, we're moving ahead because the future is now, and we just won a Super Bowl, and we got to look to the future, and the future presumably is they want to retain Osweiler, and understand some other teams are going to make a run at Osweiler. I heard today that the Texans might be going hard after him.
I mean, I've heard some national people project him on the Browns, but that's not a very big reach. Any quarterback is going to be projected to the Browns because...
Including RG3.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but let's stay on Peyton and let's stay on the past because talking about the legacy, and even in the news break, you listen to Jeff Saturday, who was his center for, over a dozen years, and all of the players, and you think about... And I guess maybe you do have to delineate regular season and then postseason, but I don't know. He's one of the players, when you look at all the players in all the sports, that didn't just have great stats, didn't just have a great legacy, but he's one of the players. And there's only, a small number of these guys that were so good that they, caused changes in the fundamental ways the game was played against them defensively, and also caused changes in the rule. Well, maybe was the effect or the beneficiary because of the rules towards passing in football, but caused so many changes in the way the defenses and the other teams either approached the game or approached their game or whatever it may be. There's only so many guys that actually changed the game fundamentally, and I think Peyton may have been one of them because he definitely took, especially we think of him now, and you look at all these guys that are here now in this new crop of quarterbacks, and you look at Tom Brady who came during Peyton Manning's career, but I mean, start back from the beginning and you realize that he was on another planet from the quarter. He took it to another level, and it was a long time before the NFL could catch up, even if he didn't win as many Super Bowls as his talent perhaps should have.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I mean, the things that he put together all of the components that you need to be a great quarterback, and not least work effort. That's all you ever hear about. So he was a smart guy. And he could be a surgeon in the passing game in terms of being able to see the field and being able to put the ball right where he wanted. But from what everybody says about him, nobody ever worked harder at it. Thought about the game all the time. Worked with his receivers in the off season. Drilled. In other words, to the point where he could practically do it in his sleep in terms of throwing the routes, making the throws. And you put all that together. You put together the intellect. You put together the natural, athleticism, ability to throw the football, and do it with accuracy that I think only Tom Brady comes close to in the last decade or two. And then just an insane focus on work and practice and drilling, and that's the thing that comes through when you hear people talk about what he did well, and just an incredibly focused guy who never apparently could work hard enough at it.
I agree. I mean, the effort. And here's my thing. What was it, 1998 was when he was drafted? So from 98 until now, and I mean it, any quarterback that has played since the Browns have come back, basically, if you were given this question, and I'm talking to you, Dan, but I'm talking to anybody that's listening, you're given this question, one game to play, pick a quarterback in the NFL. If it's not Tom Brady, it's Peyton Manning since 1998. I can't even think of who the next one I would put up third on the list would be. To me, it's a runaway, one of those two guys. And if it's a one-game thing, I would probably pick Peyton only because of I don't know, the results. Brady was able to play the system. I guess it depends. If we're just putting a team together randomly, I would think I'd go with Peyton. If we were if it was the same team, then maybe Brady, because he's good at playing to his team's strengths. But I mean, that's it. Brady, Manning since 1998. If you say you've got one game that you have to win, pick any quarterback, it's only those two. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely would agree. Brady got more rings, but
absolutely, yeah.
That's a function of the teams he's been on, as opposed to necessarily him being a better QB. Lately, I can't imagine anybody being any more accurate than Tom Brady. In terms, the guy just throws darts, and as far as having been in the league as long, maybe not quite as long as Peyton Manning. He seemingly has not lost arm strength like Peyton Manning clearly did. But, yeah, you're right. I think they're 1-2, and you can flip a coin as far as being categorized in that winner category.
Do you put the arm strength as that's got to be a function of those neck injuries and the accumulation there? Because I didn't think that he was losing the arm strength prior to the time that he left the Colts. Maybe he was just at the beginning of the look down, but I mean, clearly he still had some gas in the tank. But I mean, the neck injuries really sped that up.
Oh yeah, I think so. In other words, it hasn't been a long gradual decline of Manning's arm strength. It's been really over the last 2 years. Just started to see hints of it in 14, and then 15 it really kind of degenerated altogether. So to the point where it really was. We've used the analogy before. It was sad to see. It was like watching Willie Mays play in his last year. Because you just were seeing a shadow of the great player that was before.
And that's almost what it makes it so. I think the finality of him winning the championship, it almost makes it worth it that he kind of limped through what would have been an average. And a Browns quarterback, that's just an average season. That's an above average season for a Browns quarterback. But had he not finished it, then you really would have had that feeling for that last season of Peyton's career. Him winning, and that's why he had to walk off in the sunset, because the season was and the results were, man, it's clear as day that he is quickly starting to come back to the pack and then some. To end it with the championship makes suffering through, and I don't want to say suffering through, but it makes struggling through that final season worth it to get that final kudo on your way out the door.
Yeah, no doubt. And it also kind of really makes you believe that he was an inspiration to that defense, as talented as they were, that they kind of knew, hey, if we're going to win this thing, it's going to be on us, and it was, as it turned out.
And you know what? I do want to go the other side now. We can talk about the good and the bad. How much do you think, on top of the Broncos' decisions, how much does the swirling rumors of HGH and of sexual harassment at Tennessee and these things that came out in the last few weeks about Peyton Manning, I wonder how much, you got to think some of that may have played a small part in it as well, but how much of that, I guess it doesn't taint yet, but I mean, there's still a backside of these investigations to come. So there is still potential for the way the world looks at Peyton Manning to change should more information come out in this. But how much do you think those played a part, too, in him saying, okay, enough is enough?
Boy, I purely just, speculate on it. I guess you have to say it would be naive to say that it had zero effect.
That's what I think.
If for no other reason than, hey, I can put all this behind me. If he were going to I don't know, Jerry. I just think it may have had an effect because if I just ride off into the sunset, then this story will too, or at least maybe that would be the hope. And even if it doesn't go away, it has no way to impact my future as a player, good, bad, or indifferent. If his legacy is going to be tarnished, it's going to be tarnished whether he plays another season or not. I think by retiring, he helps it go away or at least fade from the public eye in terms of being a prominent story in NFL circles.
And me personally, I mean, not to take light away from the sexual harassment case, but I'm very curious to see if there's any more that comes out with the HGH, because I'm very much one of those people that believes that they all. I don't want to shade all athletes with that light, but I know how much that permeates the environment and people. People view human growth hormone. Athletes view it differently than they view steroids. They're able to convince themselves that this is a natural part of their body, that they're simply encouraging the process.
Yeah.
And that they're doing something that's not as bad. So I don't know, if it comes. I'm very curious to see, as I said, whether they can find any proof. But I can't write that off just because I like Peyton Manning and I don't like this guy or that guy. I can't write that off because I very much am suspicious as well. Although at the same time, I think, and this doesn't mean much because it could have just been an experiment that he decided not to continue with. Maybe he did it for a short period of time, but the results on the field don't exactly jibe with hitting the fountain of youth and having a big rejuvenated season. You know what I mean? So
sure,
it's not like he hit the sauce and then went out there and threw for 50 touchdowns, Right.
It's not like Brady Anderson, coming to spring training with, 20-inch biceps and hitting 50 homers for one season. But yeah, you're right. So, I think, like I said, I think it'll probably tend to fade, even if the stories continue, if the journalists stay on it, or just because he's such a big name and a first ballot Hall of Famer and all that, that I don't think he can assume that the story will go away just because he retired. But at least it's not going to be probably front page news like it would have been if he was coming back.
For sure. And I think we'd be foolish not to think that was part of it. Either way, first ballot Hall of Famer, as you said, there's no doubt about that. And he walks off into the sunset. And you know what? Let's stay on football for a minute. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about LeBron. We'll get to that in a minute, but let's stay on football. Stay on quarterbacks. Osweiler, we mentioned already several teams are out there with him. The Browns, they have a lot of directions that they can go here. RG3, you mentioned his name a few minutes ago, and the word comes out this morning that he is officially released. He's going to continue his career somewhere outside of Washington. And while I do chuckle at the idea of all this time later, RG3 ended up back in Cleveland, and instead of giving up 8 million draft picks for him, he just comes in as like a, training camp walk-on free agent or something. But anyways, do you think that's a viable direction? Because part of me, I was talking with some guys about this the other day. I said, I want to talk to Dan about this on the show because you got, Hugh Jackson. He's got the connection from, I don't know how good of friends they were, but what's his name? Excuse me, that went over there to coach. Gruden, Jay Gruden. You got to think that he's got some phone calls, Hugh Jackson, that he could make to find out what the real deal is with RG3. Was it really a owner-coach dynamic? Was it that he was a superstar? Was it what it was? But how much interest do you think there would be? Because Hugh Jackson has shown an ability to get more out of guys than what they've gotten before. And it is intriguing, the idea of, this is not Johnny Manziel. This is a dual threat quarterback with the size, although he's already been damaged, but with the size that you at least hope to see. This is a linebacker running quarterback here. And what do you think? Do you think Hugh Jackson would be interested? And do you think there's any viability in RG3? What kind of contract is he going to get anyway? He's not going to get a big deal, is he?
Well, I don't think he's going to get 18, 20 million, like the sort of the going rate for the elite QBs in the NFL. I would say, first of all, I would be skeptical that he would be the type of quarterback that Hugh Jackson would go for.
Right.
Seems like Hugh Jackson's a little bit more of a traditional pro-style drop-back guy.
Yep.
And secondly, I read the other day that there may be as many as 10 or 11 teams seriously in the hunt for RG3, which leads you to believe that the Browns would be somewhere down the pecking order for him and his agent as great places to land. So those factors lead me to believe that he's not really a serious option for the Browns. And the other thing is the comments that they've made off season about whatever you may think about the McCown. The Browns think they have their veteran quarterback in place that they can use to help groom their quarterback that they undoubtedly will draft on either 2 or 32.
You guys are listening to the Sports Fix. I just realized we've crossed over the top of the hour. J-Rocc, Dan Wismar, and we've crossed over into talking a little Browns. And right now we're pitching around some RG3 conversation. And having a dozen teams in the mix is obviously just going to throw up the marketplace there. And I'm with you. I was just curious if that would be. You got to think, knowing that there's 10, 11, 12 teams that are going to be out here in the market anyways, kicking the tires on RG3, you got to think that there's a lot of at least belief. And, it's an ego-driven league. Everybody thinks that they can rehab somebody or fix them or whatever, but you've got to think that there's a lot of belief around the league that some of his problems were the dynamic between the owner and Mike Shanahan a couple years ago and various other coaches along the way and kind of soiled the milk with RG3 there. And you've got to think that there's a lot of people willing to take a shot. So, I could quickly see his market going from to red hot in a matter of no time.
Yeah, I think that's true. Certainly, there's no questioning the athletic ability and the arm and all the measurables. I don't know what the guy's makeup is, but certainly the knee injury is what sort of set him on the skids. And then after a while, when he came back, I think he probably came back a little bit too early. He didn't have the mobility. He was wearing a brace. He didn't look comfortable. And they were losing games. And, of course, they had a bad team. So when Kirk Cousins comes out and starts winning football games, the crazy thing to me is that now Kirk Cousins looks like he may end up with in
franchise
that
deal.
$18 million a year quarterback category. And I don't know that Kirk Cousins is worth that or ever will be, but it looks like that's where they are and what they're planning to do going forward. I don't know if they're going to draft somebody or who knows what the Redskins will do. They were a surprise team to me last year in terms of making the playoffs, certainly. But I just think paying Kirk Cousins $18 million, someone's smoking something. I don't know. I mean, that's I guess he's in the driver's seat. He's I believe a free agent, is he not, Kirk Cousins, or maybe restricted or something?
Yeah,
but it looks like they're going to re-up him and pay him all kinds of crazy NFL quarterback money. And meanwhile, their next big thing, big hope, RG3 is on the open market and going to sign somewhere else and hopefully, make somebody else happy. But I don't think the Browns are going to be in this one. I think if they're looking around for veteran quarterbacking, which I'm not so sure they are, I think they might be looking a different direction than RG3.
For Kirk Cousins, I go back to that sentence alone, and I just think, man, but it's going to happen. They're going to drop $15, $18 million a year on Kirk Cousins from Iowa, who to me is Colt McCoy, man. I mean, and that's no offense. I mean, if that's the case, Colt McCoy's career went wrong by ending up in Cleveland because that concussion cost him $18 million a year.
Yeah, it could have been Brian Hoyer, his fellow Spartan from Michigan State. Might be might as well be in the same exact boat if the cards had played out a little bit differently. He could have been there instead of down in Texas. I think he kind of sealed his fate in Texas. And looks like they'll be drafting quarterback also, but we shall see. It's going to be fun. It looks like I saw some mock drafts had Paxton Lynch going down there to the Texans.
Mock drafts. By the way, speaking of quarterback, real quick, I'm just going to throw this out here because it's a bad look. We talk about optics all the time. I must have woke up to I don't know, 10, 12 messages yesterday of the articles. People like, this is your boy, you want the Browns to bring him back? Because I've, the last couple weeks, mentioned that I'm interested in Josh Gordon and the return of Josh Gordon and all that stuff. And you know, I think I've got faith in the guy. And I get sent a bunch of articles. You know where I'm going. He was out partying with Johnny. Speaking of the UFC, he was at the UFC the other night. Pictures, everybody's like, this is your boy. I'm like, well, I mean, they're not on Swans. They don't have magnums of Ace of Spades. They're just watching the fights right now. But in general, I can see why people are like, see, you're crazy. This guy's not going to change. I don't think you can hang a guy up for going out with somebody that he sees as his friend, but that definitely wasn't the smartest look. While you're trying to convince everybody that this is the new you're hanging out with the guy who is the most toxic individual in the Cleveland sports scene right now.
Yeah, you're right. Not a good look. I just, I know that the players of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s right now, as they sit back and walk to the mailbox to collect their NFL pension checks every month, have to just be thanking their lucky stars that they lived in the days before social media, and that they played the game in the days before their every move was photographed and placed on the internet. Because it is crazy these days, and we would never know of or care about any of these goings on were it not for Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and like I said, the players of yesteryear have to just be, ever thankful that they played before this era.
Oh, yeah, and they didn't have any of this social media stuff. Well, while we're throwing out free agents and stuff, talking about the Browns, let's throw something, because this is the week that all of these things really start moving into turbo speed. Alex Mack the other day opting out of the final 3 years of the contract, and he's going to go out here. And I got to say this, as much as a couple of years ago, people, and I was right there on board the train, and I'm not going to just turn and say, oh, Alex Mack's a bum. That being said, he may have done the Browns a favor, because he leveraged a situation where the Browns were in a very precarious position. They thought they were heading up and they weren't exactly heading down, and they needed to lock some players up, and they thought, okay, this is a monumental franchise type deal here. They didn't want upheaval on their offensive line, and they may have overpaid for that. And so perhaps Alex Mack did the Browns a favor. Now, that's assuming that you can replace him either with himself on a new contract or replace him, which either Cam Irving or somebody adequate, but he's opted out now. You have the Mitchell Schwartz decision coming. So Tayshaun Gibson is another one coming up. Those are three really big key decisions, I think, the main ones that the Browns have to make of their own guys. So before we look outside of those guys, how do you see any of those coming back or not?
Well, I think if you have followed the Browns over the years, you would just immediately chalk them all up and say that, well, like Alex Mack, you're going to say all the right things, and then you're going to go sign with somebody else. And there's not a lot of optimism that I can sense from people that think that they have a chance to retain any of their free agents, with the possible exception of Benjamin. Gibson has said some things that make you think that he will grab a chance to go elsewhere. As far as the ranking of them, the one thing that gives me hope is that Alex Mack has been open and pretty much has said that he does like it here. He's enthusiastic about your Jackson. He's dating a girl locally here. Nothing like a woman to help you keep a guy around. And so there may be some hope there. The other thing is, not too many teams want to tie up $10 million in their center. And that's where we're talking about. He made 8 something, and clearly he's going to be in the $10 million a year range. I would hope, with all the cap space the Browns have, that they would go all out to sign him. I think the most important free agents are Mack and Schwartz. Maybe you can sign one and you can't sign the other. I do hope that they will sign at least one, if not both. I sure would love to see Alex Mack stay here, and I'm not, as long as it's Jimmy Haslam's money, I'm okay with $10 million for a center. They say Bitonio's contract is coming up after this year. Yes. And he'll be ready for a big payday too, and you'll have a ton of money tied up in your offensive line, obviously. But I'm prioritizing the 2 offensive linemen you got to get one or the other. I don't think you can create two more holes on this team with solid established players. But at the same time, that Mac is going to command a lot of money, and there will be at least 2 or 3 teams out there that are more than willing to pay $10 million for a center. I think he can put them over the top or whatever. Just depends on how attractive those situations seem to him versus what looks like now at least a situation locally here that he's considering or willing to listen to stay.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mack is the one that's going to go. I think Schwartz, I think the Browns get him. Although I got a feeling that when he hits the open market, his value is going to go up a lot higher than the Browns anticipate too. As far as the salary cap, and I don't have these cap numbers in front of me, but all the talk about, I know for the last few years the Browns have left a ton of cap room on the table, but with the I don't know that that's necessarily the case because they're going to start reaping the backside of some of these other contracts where they've cut guys, they've left money on these. There's a lot of dead. Aren't the Browns near the top of the league in dead cap space? And I'm not positive about this, but I do think that they have a lot of dead cap space as far as paying for things that. Mistakes of the past, perhaps, because when you cut guys loose.
The number I have heard is that they have the 3rd most cap space in the NFL.
Okay.
The number that I've heard floating around is $48 million. And obviously, you not only need to sign existing players, but you need to sign all your draft choices, et cetera, using that money. But the cap is going up again, and the Browns, as I understand it, have more cap space than all but 2 other teams.
And you know what? That was one of the reasons for holding on to, Johnny Manziel. Obviously, it was a $9 million difference in what it does to your salary cap by holding on to him over the extra couple of weeks and letting him go after the 9th instead of before, which is the reason.
Well, that's what I understand. Yeah, and Alan Schefter was tweeting about that this morning, that they want to hang on because they're going to save, I guess, some bonus money.
Yes.
By holding on to Manziel.
Well, that's just it.
Releasing him later instead of sooner.
When you let a guy go, basically that's the little accounting trick that keeps you under the salary cap is you can prorate guys' signing bonuses over the length of the contract. So if it's $20 million over 4 years, then it's $5 million a year added to it. But if you cut the guy after year 2, there's a $15 million cap hit coming off in year 2 because you're going to still be charged the entire signing bonus, only it's going to come off now instead of for the next 2 years down the road.
Yeah. By the way, there's some big names getting cut around the league. Anything surprise you? Mario Williams, Tamba Hali, people like this.
Mario, not so much.
Anybody get your attention?
No, because I think Mario's on the way down. I do. I think that he got salvaged there in Buffalo and got another comeback. But, and I'm not one of these guys that chalks up everybody over 30 or any of that. But certain positions I do. I know Mario Williams can still play. What I'm saying is he's about to get a contract that's going to be worth a lot more than I think what he's going to bring to the next player on the field. He's going to be one of those. He's not going to get $100 million like Hainsworth, but I think Mario Williams is going to be one of the next millstone contracts that some team ends up with, where 2 years from now they're going, geez, man, we're paying $12 million a year for 2 sacks and a couple of tackles in the backfield.
But in the NFL they're not guaranteed. So it's a matter of signing bonus probably.
Well, that's what I mean.
You can sign a guy to a 3-year deal, and if he plays 1 year, you don't want him for the next 2. Then that base salary doesn't.
But these guys are smart, and a lot of those guys like that get the majority of their money in a signing bonus. They're smart nowadays.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the proven players are going to want double digit millions in signing bonus, and then that gets spread out over years, and you can't.
And they want to know they're getting. That's how they know they're getting paid, because, like you said, otherwise they could show up next year and go, never mind, we're going to go in a different direction. So they go, that's fine, but I got $10 million up front, so you can go ahead and go in a different direction if you want. I was reading, was it Terry Pluto? I think it was Pluto the other day that was talking about the free agency and kind of pitching, which is, I think he's dead on. I think the Browns, with these new guys in the front office, you will see no more Dante Whitners. You will see no more 30-year-old free agents. I don't think.
Right, no more Carlos Dansby's.
None of that stuff. They don't like him. I wonder if it's really. You read Terry, and I love Terry's very descriptive. He'll make it sound like these cats in the front office right now are hating every deal. Why? why do we have all these 30-year-old players on our team and we're paying them all this money and we can't get rid of them? And he's probably right, because guys like that just look at the bottom line of things. That's the scary part, though, of football. And I'm not a big fan of Whitner, whatever, but that's the scary part, is, to me, more than baseball, more than any other sport, football is the one where I'm not sure that analytics is 100% as valuable. It's going to be valuable in drafting and identifying certain things, but am I wrong? Has football changed? Is it all numerical now, or is there not more gut, more heart, more human element involved in the game of football than the other sports? Because that's kind of the way I see it.
Well, I would agree that it's less an individual sport, first of all, and I don't know. Some of those over 30 signings worked out well. I think you got decent productivity out of Dante Whitner.
I like Dansby. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say Carlos Dansby is the advertisement for, go ahead, sign the 30-year-old guy. Because if every one of them gave you what Carlos Dansby gave you in the last couple of years, man, you'd be a happy camper. I love that guy. And,
you know what Dansby did,
I hope he's back.
More than just on the field, real quick, while we're saying Dansby, what I loved about him, he produced great on the field, but he showed those young guys, and I know it got lost in the wave of more madness here in Cleveland, but any of those young guys for the past 2 years that played for the Browns saw a guy who was a millionaire with a big contract and 30 years over and invested in his career, forcing himself back from injuries to play for a team that had 4 wins, 5 wins. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
He's
everything you want, attitude-wise.
Yes.
And just as far as being a badass on the field, I mean, he gets to the ball carrier in a bad mood. I just love that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I definitely think that he was the one, as you said, that would be the poster child for that. But I mean, that's going to be, I think, that's not going to happen, at least for the next few years. I mean, and to be honest, you don't want them to, because the Browns are scrapping the ship. Clearly, they're. I don't care. You think it couldn't have got worse? It can, because they're definitely going to go with their direction. I'm not saying they're going to drop to going 0-16, but they're not going to do any quick fixes. For anybody out there going, these guys are going to turn things around. Yeah, their plan is to turn things around over the next couple of years. They're going to draft. They're going to sign a bunch of 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old free agents. I think they're going to sign some guys, but it's going to be a lot of guys that maybe casual fans aren't as familiar as, And talking about Pluto's article, I just pulled it up here. We mentioned Mario Williams, and money-wise, this is what I mean. He mentions 2 guys here, Malik Jackson from Denver and Jay Howard from Kansas City. Both of those guys had as much or more production than Mario Williams did last year, and you can get them for a fraction of what you will pay for Mario Williams.
Yeah, that's true. And by the same token, you can't necessarily go by sack numbers as the sum total of a pass rusher or a defensive lineman's productivity. Yeah. Maybe Mario Williams is getting doubled on every play, and the guy on the other end of the line is picking up his sacks. But yeah, you're right. Certainly there will be some lower profile guys, and there will probably be some teams. And Bill Belichick probably turn around and grab Mario Williams and makes the Pro Bowl next year or whatever. I understand he was also slowed by a little bit of an injury this past season, and the same could be said for Tamba Hali, who had a little bit of a down year. But I would love to see Tamba Hali on this team. Frankly, I don't care how old he is.
I'll tell you what,
but.
Yeah, and I like him too, by the way. And not to cut you off, Holly is great. A couple of the names I was going to mention that I would totally dig either one of these guys. And what's really amazing about one of the names I'm going to list is this is a guy that was an afterthought in NFL circles just 2 years ago. Chris Ivory from the Jets just exploded, and I love his burst. But I like Lamar Miller. I mean, I think that he's got something. I know you look at his stats and they don't bowl you over. He's a physical back, man. I like Lamar Miller, but I like Chris Ivory. I like the hell out of Chris Ivory. And like I said, 2 years ago, I laughed because we do the Sports Fix Fantasy League every year, so I see who signs and who's. Man, 2 years ago, Chris Ivory wasn't on a roster the entire season, and now this past year he was one of the hottest. Fantasy football. Had some big. Anyways, point is that he broke 1,000 yards this year with the Jets. He's nearly 5 yards a carry, and he's only 27, man. But Chris Ivory's he can hit, but he can run. I like him. Those are two that I said, man, now there's two real possibilities there. I mean, I don't know how this new front office views the backs that we've got. Obviously, we've got Duke Johnson, which is a winner. We've got Crow, which the market is up there. But do you like Ivory or Lamar Miller?
Well, sure. I think I just question how much running back is going to be a priority for this team. I can see him drafting a guy, down in the draft or whatever. But I think with Crowell and Duke Johnson, that you've got to feel okay about your running back situation, if not great. You're not going to draft Ezekiel Elliott, so anybody that you draft at running back is going to be, probably down in one of the middle to lower rounds. I like Lamar Miller. Bring him in and have an all-hurricane backfield here with Duke Johnson. But, I just think it'll be a lower priority for the front office going into the free agent period and into the draft, frankly.
I think you're right. I definitely do. And there's some backs out there you can draft as well. And they did just invest in Duke Johnson. I think we've only scratched the surface on what Duke Johnson can do. And so I am very big on giving him, obviously it's going to be a committee again. The NFL doesn't just have a bell cow back anymore, but he's going to be the one that gets the main shot, I think, at that next year. A name that I mentioned to you last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'll throw it back out there. This isn't a wish, this isn't a guess. This is a wish, and I really hope so. And that's Sanu, Mohamed Sanu from the Bengals. He is one of my favorite under-the-radar wide receivers in the entire NFL, I think. And maybe it's because I watched him chop up the Browns last year, and you get to see him up close, but he has such a burst of speed when he gets the ball in his hands, whether it's running out of the backfield or catching passes. I love Mohamed Sanu, and I think that he's the next receiver that takes a step up as far as the casual fan catching on next year and going, man, this guy's good.
Well, sure, and of course, we're in the driver's seat, you'd think, at least with the Hugh Jackson connection, that he knows Hugh Jackson, likes Hugh Jackson, and the problem is that it's a very, very weak wide receiver free agent class. When Travis Benjamin is the third best available free agent wide receiver,
you're in trouble.
You know that it's a thin class, and so there's going to be a lot of crazy bidding for Mohamed Sanu. Is just what I'm saying. You hope that the Hugh Jackson factor can maybe steer him your way, and I'd love to see them sign Sanu. I love him too, and I love the way Hugh Jackson used him over there too. A lot of end arounds, a lot of pitch sweeps and things like that to get him out on the edge because he's so strong and big. In addition to being fast,
and that's what I'm thinking.
I loved him at Rutgers, and I thought he was a real draft sleeper. And I think they got him in the third round, if I'm not mistaken, when he came out of Rutgers. So I thought he was a steal on draft day, and because I was familiar with him from college, and so yeah, sure, I'm 100% with you on being a big Mohamed Sanu fan, and you just hope that the Hugh Jackson factor can steer him our way.
See, and he's one that I think is a fit because of the Hugh Jackson. Like you just said, a lot of times you're projecting. Like we were talking about the defensive guys. It depends on scheme and who's getting double-teamed and all that stuff. Same thing on offense. It depends on the scheme. But the fact that his offensive coordinator is here, and I loved the way he was used, that's what makes me go, man, it's not like you're going, hey, it's not going to be one of those scenarios where you go, well, why doesn't he play like he did last year in Cincinnati? You're going to get that guy. And I know Marvin Jones is the other one. I've seen a lot of Browns fans on Twitter and social media talk about him. You got to figure that the Bengals are going to have trouble keeping both of those guys. So perhaps Jones is a good plan B if you're not able to swing Sanu. Like you said, though, I think the market is going to go up. I think the market's going to go up on Travis Benjamin. So who knows?
No doubt. A lot of people are talking about the Ravens interested in Benjamin. They've seen him a lot. He's hurt him, frankly.
What do you think about that?
They need some wide receiver help, too. I'd hate to see that happen, but it seemed like they were on the verge of re-signing Benjamin a week or so ago, and then something went south. I don't know what, but maybe just the agent said, hey, we're going to take our chances. But hard to blame the agent for doing that when he's a week or so away from opting out. But anyway, we'll see. But like I said, when he's the third best available guy, all 5'10", 175 pounds of him, then you know it's a weak class.
Are the Browns better with or without him? What do you think? Does Travis Benjamin leaving hurt the Browns?
I think it does, just because he's your principal punt returner, and he's one of your. Frankly, I thought his hands were never a strength coming into this past season, but I think he proved something this past season. He caught just about everything thrown his way, made some good catches. The problem is he gets blown up too easily because he's so little. When he goes across the middle or out of the slot and takes a shot, and more than once this year he gave up the ball after making a catch when he took a hit from a big safety, and that's a problem with being 170 pounds soaking wet. You're just not going to hold up, and so that's the only concern with him is it continues to be the size and the durability because of the size, and also just the ability to hang on to the football after you catch it, because safeties are getting bigger, and you're a slot receiver. You're going to be over the middle a lot, taking shots.
My thoughts on Travis Benjamin are he's got to be a team's number 3 or number 4. If he is matched up against other teams, he will destroy third and fourth cornerbacks. And then if you've got, even let's just fantasy, you sign one of those free agents. Say you sign Sanu and you get Josh Gordon reinstated. So there's your 1 and 2 right there.
Travis Benjamin becomes a dangerous weapon.
Oh my goodness, yeah, man, because then you've got actual wide receivers to defend, and then Travis Benjamin can just cause havoc running down the field. Could you imagine then how often he would break open and you would have those long busted plays, and he could become that receiver that comes out of nowhere and everybody's going, oh my goodness, where did this guy come from? He's got 1,000 yards 10 games into the season because he's blowing open, because for once teams have to actually – I just think he is no good to you when he is your number 1 or number 2 option. You make him 3 or 4 and you're a good offense. You're a legitimate NFL offense at that point.
Yeah, that's true, and it used to be, I think, my rule of thumb, if not the rule of thumb, that it takes a wide receiver in the NFL till about his 3rd season before they really learn the ropes and come into their own. And so many times we bring guys in and out, and the turnover is so great in this organization that guys never get to their 3rd or 4th season with this team. So I think Benjamin took a big step up this past season, and he can continue to get better. But you're right, he's much better out of the slot when he's the 3rd option, when you've got either a nickel corner or maybe a safety, maybe even a linebacker trying to cover him. And that's just not going to happen.
You just hit the magic word, by the way, as we're sitting here talking about transition and turnover and change. Let's wrap up the Browns conversation with a big change. And we were talking players to begin with. Now let's talk about the front office, because this may have slipped under the radar to some people, but Alex Scheiner. I'm curious where you come in on this. Alex Scheiner, who I not only just speculate, I mean, from the things that I know have gone on over there on Lou Groza Boulevard, Alex Scheiner is a big part of what has gone on, and I'm going to say it like that, whether you think it's good or bad. He is a big part of what has happened in Berea for the Browns the last 2 seasons, 2.5 seasons or whatever. He had a lot of pressure football-wise that maybe some people think he had too much, and he's in the business side. Either way, he's one of the catalysts for pushing Manziel Mania, brother, and that is legit. That is bona fide, and he is gone from the Browns as far as he'll stick around in an advisory capacity, but Alex Scheiner has stepped down. I personally thought he accomplished what he was brought here to do when he got the stadium stuff done and the naming rights. That's his gig. It's what he did for Jerry Jones down in Dallas. It's what he did for the Browns here. And I thought, okay, what's he? Then he stuck around and became entrenched. And last year, I think the Browns, we talked about it, Dan. That front office was ugly because you got football people, then you got front office people, then you got business front office people trying to tell the football people how to play football. And that's where things got all screwed up down there. I think that Jimmy Haslam's not going to throw him under the bus, but I think this is a clear indication. I mean, you don't just move a major player out of the way like that, no matter how you write the press release. I believe that this was the next function of getting some of the dysfunction out of the front office.
I think that's a fair assessment of it, Jerry. I think you're right. He was brought in to be a business guy, naming rights, got the scoreboards done, got the stadium renovations done. But we saw, it was kind of obvious, and I'll go back to the win over Atlanta year before last when they go 7-4 and Brian Hoyer takes them to the win, and it seemed like he and Jimmy were joined at the hip at that time. They were the two that observers saw in the locker room after that game when the team is celebrating, and these are guys that have the long face on. Jimmy and Alex Shiner standing there going, "Oh crap, now we got to go with this Hoyer guy, and this is going to delay our Johnny Manziel return to glory experiment for the rest of the season, presumably." And they were downcast about it from all reports. That told me a whole lot about Alex Shiner and Jimmy Haslam at the time, that they couldn't be celebrating a big Browns win that took them to 7-4, rarefied air for this franchise over the last decade or so. The word was that Shiner was trying to inject himself into football decision-making, player personnel decision-making, when he really had no business being there. It seems as though, in my observation from afar, and again, wild speculation, it seems like there were two guys that were in the business side of the football operation, and they were probably in something of a power struggle, and Sashi Brown won.
Yeah.
Sashi Brown is now the guy making those football decisions, although they both came from a position in the organization where they weren't involved in the quote-unquote football side of things. They were on the business side of things, and Sashi being a salary cap guy and the negotiator guy and the general counsel kind of guy. But so there were two guys, Shiner and Sashi Brown, that had those non-football roles. Jimmy apparently went from being joined at the hip with one, and now he's joined at the hip with the other.
That's the best way to sum it up there. And Sashi Brown clearly came out ahead in that power struggle. But I know some people I was talking to were surprised. I got to be honest. I think that the Tide, and I had heard some of this anyway, the Tide had really started turning against Alex. He was one of the main ones that threw all of his chips in. Maybe it's he spent some time down there in Texas. Maybe he got caught up in the Texas sun and the fever for Johnny. I don't know, but he didn't just dip his toe in the Johnny water. He threw all of his chips, all of his eggs in that basket. He went all in on that hand. And the minute that thing started to go south, like truly south, he got a second and a third chance, did Manziel. But once that first season was over, when the bloom was off that rose, it was also off that rose in the front office, because all of a sudden, and think about it, it's easy. Think about any time you've been in, if you've worked together with somebody, or you've seen two people who work together closely, and when things are going well, they're thick as thieves. And then when something goes wrong, especially when it's one person's fault and the other person, all of a sudden you go, man, I put my trust in this guy, and now I see that this whole thing went south. And I think that the minute the Manziel bloom came off the rose, so did a lot of the fingers start going towards Shiner on the inside. And you don't just remove a guy. It was a process, and it took this time. And I think I'm not trying to take up for this front office just yet, but it appears that maybe Jimmy Haslam is trying to correct some, even if he's going to make more mistakes and overrun these, correct some of his mistakes as he goes, because he figured out, okay, now this is my new direction. Problem is, he won't stick with one, but he found his new direction, found his new guy, and his guy said, hey, here's the way we got to go, and he's gone that way, and he didn't have any problem in getting the impediments out of the way. But I think that Johnny Manziel took Alex Shiner down with him.
Yeah, I think that may be true. And Jimmy Haslam, new to the game of being an owner, and you're right, he is nothing if not decisive. And you just hope that he gets a couple of his gambles right here pretty soon, because he's a guy that as soon as he saw that Mike Lombardi and Banner were at each other's throats and trying to establish their own little fiefdoms in the front office there, and we're not pulling the same direction. He says, gone, both of you, get out of here, clean out, get rid of both of them. Even if I hired you, I'm not putting up with this. And maybe he's guilty of, the expression is, bearing the imprint of the last guy to sit on you. He's Alex Shiner is the guy who's got his ear for a while, and he's trusting the guy's judgment, and then the guy's judgment turns out to be screwed up, and so at least he's able to say, he's not afraid to say, hey, I made a mistake. In this case, he's not doing that. Like you said, he's not throwing Shiner under the bus. And the other thing may be that Shiner's work here is done. Brought in to do the stadium renos and arrange for the statues or whatever the business guy does and get the first energy check in the bank or whatever. And now basically he's served his purpose and he can move on to the next challenge in his life, as they say. Plus, I just do believe that there was I don't know, I want to characterize it as a power struggle. I have no way of knowing that. But Sashi Brown clearly is the guy who now has Jimmy Haslam's ear, and Jimmy's going to go with this one until he's either proven right or wrong.
You know what, too? It's one of those ones sometimes where you don't see him coming, because Shiner, Farmer, and Peyton were the three main cogs in the power struggle of the Browns over the last 2 seasons. Sashi Brown was underneath Ray Farmer. He was the one. You ever notice in life, it's like when you got a couple of brothers. It's the one that sits out on the outside, watches the other ones get washed out, and then is left standing. It's like Sashi Brown was the one on the outside, and he's the one. A lot of times in business, that's how it goes. The boss, he obviously can't talk to any of the people involved, so he goes to the guy underneath them. And next thing you know, Sashi Brown's got Jimmy's ear, and he's like, to be honest, this is kind of messed up dynamic. This is kind of messed up. This is kind of messed up. It's all messed up. Let's wipe it clean. And then, boom, like you said, here he comes, and Sashi Brown is the survivor, and everybody else is washed out. So, if nothing else, it's an interesting to watch how the tactical and the maneuvering goes on in the front office. I just want it to equal something good for the Browns fans. Maybe it's probably not going to be this year, but in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's true, and frankly, Sashi Brown a little bit out of nowhere. I mean, when
way out of nowhere,
Jimmy Haslam was traveling around the country. I saluted him for doing this, for basically going on what he was calling his listening tour, and he was consulting all people in successful organizations. And he was going to bring somebody in to run the football side of his operation. The last thing that anybody expected him to do is to find some guy in his own organization. But frankly, and you know me, I'm a 27-year season ticket holder with the Browns, and I follow the franchise closely as any fan does. 12 months ago, I did not know Sashi Brown's name. I did not know who he was. He's only been with the organization since 2013, I think. But still, a general counsel, he's a guy in the front office. Faceless, nameless, nobody knew who he was, really. I'm sure some people did, but it wasn't the general public, and even the dedicated season ticket holders that even knew who he was. And all of a sudden, he's the guy making your football decisions. So, I don't know. Hope he's brilliant. Hope he and DePodesta are just all over it. But like I said, it's the guy who's got Jimmy's ear lately, and we'll see how long that romance lasts.
He's the current girlfriend of Jimmy Haslam. We'll see how long this relationship lasts before Jimmy starts maybe swiping right on his Tinder. Dan Wismar, J-Rocc are here talking a little bit about everything. Let's go into it. We've got a couple more things to hit here before we wind things down. I don't know what you want to talk about. Let's talk a little Cavaliers hoops here, and something actually. Before we get into the Cavs specifically, something you and I have kind of batted around this season is the East and the West and the differences between the two, and how you and I have both noticed this year the big difference in the East as far as their competitiveness. And if you were to take the top 12 or 16 teams, for once it wouldn't be 12 West Coast teams or Western Conference teams and 4 Eastern Conference teams. It would be a lot more split up. And actually, I saw this, I don't know if this was today or yesterday, but it was in the Plain Dealer. They pulled up the last 20, 25 seasons and the head-to-head record of the East versus the West. This is the closest it's been since 98, 99 as far as the two sides. And the last few seasons have been huge. There's been, the West has beaten the East. It's over 100 games, on the plus the last couple of times. But this year, right now, the West is only up plus 18 with a few weeks left to go in the season. Like I said, the last two were 76 and 118. So a big improvement. I think it just shows out statistically what you and I have kind of noticed as we've been talking about the games, about how the East, as much as the narrative is opposite, the East is actually catching up and maybe as a whole starting to overtake the West, even though the top teams in the West are still the best overall.
Sure, and I think one way that you always look at to gauge how that's going is what are the records of the 6, 7, and 8 playoff contenders. The last couple of years there's been some sub 500 or right around 500 teams making the playoffs in the East, and in the West it's been you have to be 8, 10 games over 500 to even be talking about getting into the playoffs. This year, not the case. I'm looking at it right now. You've got a 31-30 team, the Bulls, in the 8th spot in the East right now. The Pacers one game better than that, and Hornets 2 games better than that. 3 and 4 or 5 games over 500. Over in the West, the Rockets are in the 8th seed right now, and they have a losing record. They're 31-32. Portland Trailblazers only 2 games over 500 in the 7th spot, and Dallas only 3 games over 500 in the 6th spot. So very, very much more balanced at the bottom. Of course, obviously at the top of the West, you've got the 2 teams running away with it that are now 56-0 at home combined, but which is just incredible. But yeah, I just always try to look at what's the record of the last team that's going to make the playoffs, and right now they're both right around the 500 mark, 1 game over, 1 game under.
Yeah, and you know what? By the way, you mentioned the record-setting pace there. How about the Lakers? And I saw this.
Took it to them. Not even a close game.
No, they blew them out. I think this is what happens when Golden State doesn't hit their threes, Dan. I think they were 5 of 30-something from three-point land in that game, and the Lakers just put it on them. I saw a comparison on Stats and Info site this morning, and I think you and I were talking maybe a week or two ago, and I'm always making the comparison to that 96 Bulls team. And I mentioned to you right around this time in the season, the Bulls had a nasty loss, and I couldn't remember who it was. I saw it today, and it's almost at the exact same time of the season. The Warriors were 55-5 heading into that game with the Lakers, lost by 17 in their 61st game of the season. 61st game of the season for the 96 Bulls. They were 54-6. They were actually 1 game worse than the Pacers. They got blown out by 32 points to the New York Knicks, which was not a good Knicks team at that time. So how funky of a coincidence that in the 61st game of both seasons, that team got blown out by one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, just an improbable kind of a scenario.
Right.
Very, very, very strange. But, yeah, and just show you can't bring it every night, although the Warriors have kind of been putting that myth to the test this year. They do bring it just about every night. But, yeah, just a strange happening. But, yeah, there's certainly some more balance. And Cavs have, one more West Coast road trip. We're about to, we head out right after this
now.
Yeah. Game, right?
Yeah,
and have 4 straight out there. Not against the strongest teams in the world, Sacramento and the Lakers, and Utah maybe. But yeah, it's. I was looking at it, Jerry. The Cavs, 44-17 right now. The 21 games to go. What's the? It's not unlikely that this team goes 16-5 the rest of the way, hits that 60 win mark. Is that about where we were thinking it was going to be? I mean, they could do better than 16-5 certainly. But I think they'll be maybe resting some people. Got a three game bulge right now over the Raptors, but 60 wins certainly not out of the question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I just going back to wrap that up is what we were talking about. I saw and at the beginning of the show, I don't know if you heard me, but I was just kind of talking, and this is something that you and I have gotten into before about how people overvalue the present and forget about the past, and it drives me crazy. But I saw it's funny. Because if I read you this now, you would think I was talking about the Golden State Warriors. There was a quote that I saw in a Sports Illustrated flashback the other day, and it was actually about the 96. It was written during the 96 season when the Bulls set the record. And it was about, if you'd have read it, you thought you were reading something today. Well, it's a good team, but they're highly overrated. They're not as good as the last three-peat that won from 91 to 94. They won't set the record, blah, blah, blah. It was from like a beat writer of the Bulls, but it was put up as an unnamed quote, and then you revealed who said it, and it was, you're thinking, oh, they're talking about the Warriors, and actually they were talking about the Bulls in the middle of the season where they were setting the record. And it's funny to see, because you don't think about that. It's not 1996, it's 2016. You don't realize that in the middle of that season, it's the same kind of quotes you hear now about the well, they're not as good as the Bulls were. In 96, the Bulls were hearing they're not as good as the last Bulls team was, in the middle of that season. So even during the record-setting Bulls season, they were being told by the media that they weren't as good as everybody thought they were. So it's just kind of funny, because now you see the exact same thing happening here with Golden State as they chase that down. But yeah, flipping back over to the Cavs, brother, I said it at the beginning of the show. The Cavs have won a couple games in a row because the Cavs have rediscovered the fun in playing defense. If they keep doing this, then we'll have some really good conversations for the next couple of months. If they don't, then it's going to end up not the way people want to see this thing end up. Tell me, Dan, you don't see the difference. I laid the stats out, but you don't even need stats to see it. They're 21-3 when they hold teams under 96 points. That's what they were doing last year. That's how they came as close as they did to winning the championship. They still win games when they try to go out and have track meets, but they don't win them anywhere near as efficiently or effectively as they do when they just play some defense.
Yeah, you're right. And we saw, the Celtics game was the best example of coming out of the gate slow, not playing any defense in the first quarter, giving up 35 points, and then just saying, okay, let's go, clamp it down. I couldn't believe that they not only wiped out the 18-point deficit, but wiped it out before halftime. I actually was so disgusted at watching that first quarter that I walked out of the room. I went into the other room. My wife was watching the game. She was calling me names for not having the the guts to sit there and watch it. But I was just getting disgusted, and so I'm sitting in the other room, and by halftime they're back. They got the lead. I ended up sitting down watching the whole second half. But it's hard to wipe out an 18-point deficit in a quarter, just like it's hard to build one. They cranked up the D, and obviously the Celtics were shooting the lights out that first quarter. They couldn't miss, and you're never going to, continue that over a whole four quarters, and they obviously did. That was an indication of when we play defense like we can, like we want to, we can beat anybody. And it was interesting to see that their ranking in defensive efficiency was number 2 in the league under Blatt and number 14 in the league under Lou so far. They threw that graphic up on the screen, and that's as telling as any stat that you can see. Let's face it, this team's playing 7-20 basketball, and they're gonna. We come off this West Coast road trip and coast at home. They won't be coasting, but I have a feeling they're going to end up as the 1 seed. And you're already seeing people just talking in terms of how they've been going small, and you've got to go small because the Warriors play small. And if you're going to compete with the Warriors, you're going to have to be playing small. So, and this whole stretch drive is going to be, at least the narrative, Jerry, I think, is going to be setting up this final series with the Warriors.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be surprised and it'll be the Spurs, but I think that's what people are talking about now, is that the Cavs are trying to tailor their game to what they think it's going to take to beat the Warriors in the finals. I just hope we get there.
See, and I like the idea of being able to switch and play the small ball, move LeBron to the 4. I kind of dig that, or even to the 5 if you need to. That's fine. But I like that as almost like being able to switch. It's almost like a team that plays the run and shoot, but they got the ability to drop into a standard offense and pound the ball when they need to. So you never know. They can use whichever ones. I like that. I like the ability to switch there. To me, you can. If I'm Ty Lue, this is all I'm telling the guys every day. It's so simple. When the Cavs play defense, they can beat anybody in the league. When the Cavs don't play defense, they can beat anybody in the league only when they play their best. So that's the difference. I mean, you play a perfect game. These Cavs have enough talent to still win games, but you're literally having to play a perfect game and outscore the other team. When you drop it on the other side, man, then it doesn't matter if you score 100, 104, 144. Like I said, 21-3, and sharing the ball too. 21-3 holding teams under 97, 29-3 when they pass the ball for 22 assists or more in a game. That's it. They've got such good passers and such good shooters that there's no reason for this team not to average 25 assists a game.
Yeah, you're right. And speaking of LeBron at the 4, I think he's thriving at the 4.
I do too.
You know, he's still running the court, but as long as he can get the calls when they mug him when he takes it to the rim, you know, I think we'll be fine. You know, he doesn't seem to get that, and people are seemingly allowed to do anything they want to LeBron when he goes to the basket. And maybe it's just because he whines a lot after they don't get his call that the referees don't want to, you know, bail him out. But yeah, I think he's looked good at the 4. He's backing people down, and he's virtually unstoppable when he posts up. And you know, I wish he would go baseline a little bit more than he does. He always seems to go the other way to his right. I love to see him, you know, go baseline and dunk or just get the layup, but just take it strong to the rim. But I think he enjoys playing down there, and he's so strong that there's not too many guys that can hang with him one-on-one down there.
I agree. And tonight, I think you're going to see more of this. I don't expect the Cavs to be in much jeopardy. I'm not trying to overlook Memphis. I love Memphis, but for some reason, they match up awful with the Cavs, and they have for years, man. The Cavs were even able to play against Memphis before LeBron came back. There's just something about this matchup the last few years, but the Cavaliers, what was it, last year? I think they held them. The last 3 I saw is 85 games. The last 3 is the average for Memphis against the Cavs defensively. And if you remember, they blew those guys out. Oh, man, I pulled my headphones out of my voice just disappeared. I was talking to you, and I accidentally pulled my headphones out. I said, hey, where'd everybody go? I was just trying to keep talking.
And there's a bunch of teams over there in the West, and Memphis is one of them. That's really sort of been flying under the radar, and this is a good team.
I like Memphis, 25. Man. I do.
There's so much attention being paid to the Warriors and Spurs that the Thunder and the Clippers and the Grizzlies are all playing great. There's a big gap between the Grizzlies and the next best team, the Mavericks, in that West. You know, Grizzlies are 12 games over 500, and the Mavericks are 3 games over, right behind them. So they're sort of, like I said, flying under the radar as really a solid basketball team that hasn't been getting any attention at all.
Yeah, Cavs have won 9 of the last 10, and the last time they played, if you remember, it was back beginning of November, I think it was. They blew
a real blowout.
30, 35 points, something like that. Just destroyed them. So, not sure. I don't know what it is. Some teams just don't match up well for some reason. And that, like I said, I love that Memphis team over there. They're a dozen games above 500 in the West and plowing along. But tonight they head to the Q. They take on the Cavs, and you know, it's going to be a lot of fun watching the Cavs. As you mentioned, this is, what is it, six game trip here as they're getting ready to head out west after
7.
this
they
one.
They play 4 straight on the road, and then they come home for 1.
That's it, yeah, right.
And then had 2 more.
But this is their last run against the Western Conference for the most part here as they wrap up that part of the schedule. And you got to figure after that, assuming that they're in a decent position playoff, that's probably the point where they start picking and choosing who to sit and when to sit them and all of that stuff.
Yeah, apparently there's some talk given to sitting LeBron against the Lakers out there. I heard him say this morning that will have that the fact that it's his last game against Kobe will have no bearing on whether he plays or doesn't play. So it's obviously been something that's been the subject of conversation.
And I know that you don't, you got to do what's best for your team just as a sports fan, as a fan of the NBA, I would disagree with that statement because I want
to see them play against each other. I mean, we're fans of the sport. We want to see that matchup happen.
Yeah,
we want to see those guys go at it one last time.
But I think it's your responsibility too. And I know it's easy for guys that aren't doing it to say that, but I do think that that word should be used more when you are in the position to make the living that you make, do the things that you do, there are responsibilities, and I think that's one of them. I mean, that will never come around. That statement kind of ticks me off because, yes, it does make a bearing. I think it makes a huge bearing. Unless you're hurt, you get out there and you play your last game against Kobe, you know? I mean, that's for yourself,
that's true.
too.
And Popovich doesn't care what you think, frankly, Jerry, but, you know, he's the guy that basically thumbs his nose at all those responsibility statements. But I agree, and I always go back to what Jordan would say about, you know, there's some kid in the stands there this is his one chance to see you play, and you know, you gotta play all out, and you gotta give it to him, and you know, his dad bought this ticket for him at $150, you know, 4 months ago to come to this game to see LeBron play Kobe, and damn it, he should be able to see LeBron play Kobe.
Not to mention that it's got a historical significance, too. Could you imagine if Michael Jordan said, well, you know, we're playing the Suns tonight. It's the last game before Barkley retires. I'm not sure if I'm going to play. Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he would never. He'd be like, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to beat my man one more time, and I'm going to make sure that he goes into retirement and remembers who the man is. But there's not a chance in the world. And that's the thing. And it's kind of like, it's just like the whole thing. By the way, what was your take on the whole flying off to play with practice with Dwayne Wade for a couple of days? Because
not worth the energy it took to comment on it. I mean, LeBron gave it all that he should have given it by saying, I did it because I wanted to.
Right. You know, I'm with that.
So
like,
take it on down the road if you don't like it. He's my friend. I had a couple days off. We'd rather spend a couple days off in Cleveland or spend them in Miami. Let's flip a coin.
But I do.
You know, I'm gonna head to Miami. I'm gonna work out while I'm there. I'm not gonna be on swans with magnums. I'm gonna be working out, you know, with my buddy. And if you don't like it, then get a life.
And that's what I said. I said, hey, I'm fine that he's practicing some basketball. Now, I think you got to agree with me, though, is that he earns the flip side that comes with it, and he's going to have to, that's what you get. You did what you did 5 years ago. So people aren't necessarily going to forget that. So the minute you go take a flight to Miami, if you'd have went to Timbuktu, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But the fact that you went to Miami,
and I think he's been around this town long enough to know how paranoid and thin-skinned Cleveland fans are. And I think that all figured into his calculus, and he said, "I'm going anyway because I feel like it."
Exactly. But I mean, to me, you cannot complain throughout the rest of your career that that any of that, because it's the price you pay, and you deal with it, and you go, hey, I understand you're not going to completely trust me, and maybe 10 years from now if he's still here, you know what I mean, then you go, okay. But I get it. It's like when you patch up the relationship, there's still going to be trust issues. And problem is your relationship is broadcast to the world. So there's going to be worldwide trust issues. Either way, It is what it is. Now, I did have an issue if people wanted to say, because my buddies were like, oh, hey, man, he's just down there recruiting. Oh, well, you know what? I don't like that any much the opposite way as I liked it when it was happening to the Cavaliers. If that's the case, you want to argue with me that they're down there talking about playing together in Cleveland, I got a problem with both of them still, because that's if I was in Miami, I'd be pissed off about that too. But that's a different argument. But yeah, and I think that's the problem, is that people they know the collusion and all that. As far as that, like I said, I'd rather the cat go play basketball somewhere than go to the casino all night, go to do this, that, and the other thing. He's going to practice basketball. And
LeBron has never been that guy in his whole career. So it's one thing you don't have to worry about. He's always been a family guy.
And he came back and played some ball, so it is what it is. But I get it that people in Cleveland instantly are like, look, things are falling apart in Cleveland. He's getting ready to go back to Miami. He's already setting it up. Now, first off, if he was setting it up, remember, the first one was set up 2.5 years in advance in the back of a bus in Beijing between the guys. So he wouldn't have done it in the public. If he was going to screw Cleveland over, he wouldn't be flying to Miami and letting you guys know about it. He would have just laid low, and you would have went, oh, my God, LeBron just left again. So let's just calm down on that one. Hey, let's talk a little Tribe before I let you go. And I just want to say, we talked about this before, and everybody was laughing at me last year when I said, hey, Am I the only person that thinks it would be interesting to see if Carlos Santana could play leadoff? Because he's got all the skills of a leadoff hitter with the exception of not being blazing fast on the base paths. Everybody laughed at me. Everybody said, oh, you're crazy. Terry Francona doesn't think it's such a crazy idea now, does he?
Well, yeah, I guess he tried it out one
I'm
game,
just
right?
playing, but
I was glad to see Carlos, if nothing else, his first at bat of the spring, he hit the ball out of the park. So that was a nice thing. Hopefully that's an omen. We always give way too much weight to every little thing that happens in spring training. That's why I'm not worried that we played 6 games and we haven't won one yet.
I didn't even realize that. I did not even realize that they were 0 for the spring.
Yeah,
so
0 for 4. We're 0 and 4 with 2 ties.
The White Sox
game was going to be. Looked like it was going to be the 3rd tie yesterday until the bottom of the 9th. And I give up a walk-off home run in the game yesterday. But some good things. I mean, and I've paid attention to pretty much all the games so far, just because they're baseball games that are involving the Indians. So I'm watching them. I'm either listening to them or I'm keeping track of them on my at-bat app. But, some good things happening, mostly because all of the starters have come out and had decent performances. I mean, Bauer gave up a couple of homers in his outing, but basically Kluber and Carrasco and Salazar and Cody Anderson have all looked good in their starts. And, going 2 innings, you can't get too much of a gauge on it, but everybody appears to be healthy and in good shape. They say, I just heard yesterday Hamilton saying that Roberto Perez has lost 25 pounds. He was a little bit heavy last year, and he looks great. So a lot of good things. You see Napoli hit his first dinger yesterday, and Joey Butler went deep yesterday, and you like to see some of the guys that maybe you're counting. Colin Cowgill hit a homer yesterday. Some of these guys that you're wondering about and counting on to be your outfielders this year are showing up early in spring, and so it's it's always interesting. Nothing boring about it. Have you paid much attention to the game so far, Jerry?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For the life of me, I
did not even realize that they hadn't won one. I realized they tied the 2, and again, I don't pay attention, to the standing. At least not yet.
At least 2 of the games they've had a lead going into the 9th inning.
Right.
And lost it. One they lost, one they tied, or a couple of games that they tied, I think, where they both had leads going in the 9th. And you've got, Sean Moore Armando or somebody pitching the 9th inning, and the other night, Ryan Merritt, guys that are never going to be on this roster that are giving up your 9th inning lead. So, like I said, it's unimportant, but I'm sure you'd probably like to get in the W column here pretty soon.
What do you think here about the outfield? I know Austin Jackson ended up signing with the White Sox. A lot of guys were throwing his name out there. Indians seem to be. You threw out Cowgill. We've seen Tyler Naquin start playing. He started things in center field the other day, and
and he had a nice ball game. He had a triple, and he made a beautiful catch over the shoulder. Back to home plate, going away. A couple of nice defensive plays. He's got a big arm out there. We'll love to see Tyler Naquin, make it interesting in terms of making this 25-man roster. He looks like a ball player. He's still young, and the only question is, can he hit? He can play a decent defensive center field, and he's got one of the better arms of any of their young outfielders. Don't know, but Joey Butler. I don't know about Cowgill. We'll just have to see over the long haul. And everything you hear about Brantley is that he's ahead of schedule, and
yes,
he's shooting for opening day. That solves an awful lot of your outfield problems if you can go into the season with Brantley and assume that Lonnie's going to be over there in right field most of the time, or at least you'll have Roger Davis be able to platoon with Lonnie in right field. And not have to be an everyday outfielder because of Brantley's absence. So, other than that, it makes me a little nuts, Jerry, when I see the spring training and you're 6 games in now, and still you're only playing like 1 or 2 at the most starters per game. Guys like Lindor, Kipnis, these guys have played in 1 ball game.
Yeah.
I'm just anxious to get them in there and see them and get them ready. And frankly, I don't care what Shane Robinson and Robbie Grossman are looking like in spring training. Not only are they not going to be on your team, but they're not even going to be on the AAA team in any kind of major league prospect category. And so I don't know. It's frustrating to me that the guys that are going to be on your team playing aren't playing in spring training games. One or two starters per day. I mean, obviously,
isn't that what you do in the first couple weeks
as the spring goes along? But
isn't that what you do in the first 2 weeks of spring games, though? Because those guys are going to get washed out quick. Those guys are getting a quick look, and then they're going to thin the camp and move those guys down to minor league camp, and then you'll get.
Well, believe me, I'm not trying to say I know better than Terry.
No.
About how to do his job, but
you just want to see him play.
Yeah, I just want to see my guys. Yeah,
I'm with you too. They give the lineup at the beginning. I'm going, all right. Well, there's a couple guys out there, man. And that's the only thing is that unfortunately, I'm a big radio guy, and radio behooves you much more when it's the regulars and they're playing baseball, because you can't exactly evaluate guys listening to how they batted on the radio. I mean, you kind of can, but you don't really see it. So when these guys you never heard of, you know what I mean? Like,
like yesterday, the other day over the week, I think it was Saturday's game, maybe Friday, I got a chance to see Tyler Naquin play for the first time. I'd never seen him before. Been hearing about him for years, and I basically got a chance to watch him play defense. I'd take a couple at bats and spray the ball around. He's a nice looking kid and a good looking ball player. He's my guy. I'm pulling for him. He's a first round draft choice. You hope that he turns out to be worth the pick and he can help the major league team, if not now, then maybe next year. But that's the reason I watch spring training, is to see guys like that are the up and comers and guys that have a shot this year.
No, I agree with you, and I'm pulling for Naquin. I'd really like to see him, make it. I mean, like this season, I'd really like to see him come out of nowhere and be my surprise of the spring here for the Cleveland Indians. Man, next week, I'll tell you what, we'll be second week into spring training. We'll see how things are rolling along. I know Bruce updated me. What was it? Uribe got in his first game, popped out, so at least he's in the game. He's on the field. He's with us on the roster. All that stuff out of the way, so we'll start to see how he adapts to things as we go. But by the time you and I get back on here next week, championship weeks will be wrapped up, and we will be on the cusp of March Madness. I mean, I know we didn't really get into it a whole lot. What are your chances? What do you give Ohio State here coming out of the Big Ten tournament? They play first on Thursday. I see a lot of people have them on the bubble as far as maybe one of the last four teams out or the last four teams in of the big tournament. What do you think their chances are in the Big Ten?
Slim, because frankly they have to beat Penn State, and their second game will be against Michigan State. They've been drilled by Michigan State twice in the last week and a half.
The other day was bad.
And so that's just not going to happen. So most people said they needed to win at least 2 games in the Big Ten tournament in order to get in. I thought that maybe the win over Iowa last week would help them a lot.
That was a good one.
10 team. But beating Iowa and beating Kentucky early, they're only 2 quality wins all year. And they've got some really, really ugly losses. Most people haven't pegged for the NIT. I think that's probably about right. The team has gotten better as these kids have come along during the season. But they've got Jermaine Tate out, or Jayshawn Tate out, rather, for the rest of the season. That doesn't help. I just don't think they're going to have the resume to get in. And there's not going to be too much arguing it if they don't.
Well, it starts with Penn State. It ends on Sunday. When you and I come back on Monday, we will know the entire tournament and the play-in games and all that, and we can do a little preview of March Madness. I'm not going to lie. Maybe this is a good thing. I was talking to somebody over the weekend. I said, because of broadcast, I've had a much more expansive winter schedule this year. I haven't watched nearly as much college basketball as I used to, or as much as I like to. I'm going into this tournament blind, and maybe that'll be fun. Maybe for once, instead of thinking I know every upset and every Cinderella guy, I'm just going to sit back and watch some basketball this year, because this is probably my weakest overall knowledge of the NCAA tournament. I just have not been able to keep up on a good week-to-week basis with this season. So I'm looking forward to the tournament because, hey, man, you could be Joe Blow off the street. You don't have to know who they are. Once the tournament comes, that's the magic, you know?
That's right. I'm going to have my trained monkey make my picks this year, and I think he could probably do better than I did last year.
I know. I was awful last year.
Now, you did hear that Warren Buffett's got $1 million for anybody that picks the Sweet 16.
He changed it this year?
It's $1 million for anybody that picks the first 2 rounds perfectly.
Because the 4 was impossible.
All you got to do is get to the Sweet 16 with a perfect bracket.
That's still impossible.
And that's $1 million. That stuff is hell.
A perfect first 2 rounds? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a shot at it. What the hell?
Oh, heck, why not? Yeah. But, yeah, you're right. It's as open, wide open a year as it's been forever. There's no Kentucky this year, 30-0 or anything. There's probably, 8, 9, 10 teams that conceivably could win the thing, and that always makes it fun. It's always one of my favorite times of year.
Me too. I can't wait. We'll talk about it. Free agency will be upon us. Johnny Manziel may no longer be a Brown. Spring training will be rolling. Cavs got another week. We'll have a lot to do on Monday.
Sounds good, Jerry. Good to be with you. We'll catch up to you in a week.
Great show. Have a good week, my friend.
Bye now.
That is Dan the Man Wismar. Check him out on everybodyhatescleveland.com and check him out every Monday right here on the Sports Fix. We're going to call it a day. I may be able to sneak back in here later this week and do a second show this week. So follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixCLE, and we'll see. If not, I'll be back Monday, but I'm going to try to get a weekend edition in here, especially with championship week roll on. Either way it goes, look forward to seeing you the next time we are in the studio live, same bad time, same bad channel. The Sports Fix, baby. We'll see you next time we do it live right here across the Sports Fix Radio Network. We love you, Cleveland and beyond. Have a great week. It is beautiful outside. Go do something. Enjoy it. And we'll see you soon right back here on The Fix.
When